As we discussed many times on this channel previously, sleep paralysis is a phenomenon that occurs regularly in 5% of the population. It can happen both when waking up and falling asleep. It happens, sleep paralysis, due to a process in the brain called atonia, where your brain shuts down your body's ability to move in an attempt to prevent it from harming itself during dreaming. However, in individuals with sleep paralysis, you end up still awake while atonia is engaged, so you're unable to move, but you're still conscious and your eyes are open. You're still in the real world, and this is something referred to as the hypnagogic state. During the hypnagogic state, people experience powerful hallucinations. They can be visual, kinesthetic, or auditory. Today I'll be talking to Maury, who has experienced sleep paralysis for over 20 years. Welcome, Maury.
How you doing, man?
Awesome. So I wanted to start by asking how many episodes of sleep paralysis have you had every week, month, or year, would you say?
It's pretty irregular. Honestly, it's not something I can put on a schedule. Sometimes if it's getting really bad, it's flaring up, I guess I could say. It could be twice a week. Sometimes it might be once a month, or sometimes I might go a couple of years and not have an experience.
Would you say it's related to what's going on in your life at the time? Like if you're in a period of higher stress, would you have it more often?
I would notice, so I get to points where I want to try it, attempt to recreate it or to manifest it in a way, I guess. It's nothing too major seems to happen, I guess, from my point of view. I guess you can say, when I'm a child, there's a lot of changes going on, things happening, evolving as a person. I notice I do have a lot more lucid dreams during that kind of time. Since then, they've kind of fallen off. And the lucid dreams and the sleep paralysis almost seem to pair together. Sometimes, like when I'm having one or like that. Does that make sense?
Sorry, it sounds like sort of the ends of your sentences trail off. It might have to do something with the mic. I didn't catch that last part.
Oh, I was saying, lucid dreaming. I would have a lot of growing up. During the time that you're kind of growing and evolving as a person. I noticed they kind of go hand in hand with me. If I'm having one, say lucid dream, then I'll also be more likely to have sleep paralysis, or vice versa.
Interesting. And did you say that you tried to have sleep paralysis, or did I misunderstand?
No, I definitely did. After having it a couple of times, it's pretty freaky. You're never really quite prepared for it. So I tried to prepare for it so that maybe I could just experiment with it, see what happens. And I would notice that it's not necessarily changes in my life, I don't think, but maybe certain activities I did during the day. Like say if I'm really active right before I go to bed, physically active, I'll be more likely to experience sleep paralysis.
Interesting.
So that was kind of my testing, was doing nothing before going to bed and then being kind of like, I guess, hyper physically active right before trying to go to sleep. That was kind of the gist of my experiment.
Interesting. And you're saying that when you first had it, that was sort of when it was the most intense, correct?
Yeah, my very first experience, something I never really quite forgot. I could go into the story.
Sure.
If you want.
I would like that.
Yeah, I was, like I said, it was about third or fourth grade that I had it. And I remember it was, because they say it happens either, as you're waking up or before you go to sleep. And the thing that was strange about it, I didn't know anything about it at the time, but further on in the years I did some research. trying to figure out what was going on. But I remember that night, I felt like I never really fell asleep at all. From my point of view, it was my bedtime. Went into my room, laid down, had all the lights off. There was a hallway light on that kind of flooded into my room. And I'd only just laid down, and I was looking around my room, looking for ghost or boogeyman, whatever, in the dark. And I came across the back of my door, which is the darkest part of my room. And I started to think, it's unusually dark behind my door. And I kept staring at it for a couple of minutes. I never laid down, never got comfortable. I was just sort of eyeing the room. And I noticed the shadows behind my door kind of started to move a little bit. I freaked out. I tried to get up and run out the door, and that's when I realized that I couldn't move at all.
Wow.
And I started freaking out now because I didn't have any control of my body, and I'm sitting there looking at these shadows moving, and then it kind of like a 3D shadow. I guess I don't know how to really explain it. Like it had depth to it in a way. The person, but it was a shadow, and it came out from behind the door, traveled along the wall, and then came off the wall to the side of my bed. And my breathing got heavy. I still couldn't move. I tried to call out for my mom, and my voice didn't work. And it's kind of like a harsh, raspy whisper was about all I could get. And it picked me up, and I had this weird drawling kind of, gasp for breath or whatever. And I finally was able to move my hand and ended up poking it where I thought its eyes would be if it had them. And I got kind of this distant scream. It didn't sound like it was right next to me, even though I could see it. It sounded like the scream was kind of far off. And it backed up and faded into the wall, and I heard my bed springs, kind of going off as I landed on the bed. And I was finally able to move. I was able to speak, call for my mom. It felt like to me I was there for, I don't know what at least 15 minutes or so. It felt like my mom said I'd only just went in the room to lay down. I mean, maybe it was just a turn of phrase for her saying I just went, but it seemed like the sense of time that passed by for me was a bit off from what she experienced. That was my very first encounter with it, and one that I never really forgot about.
Wow, that's so intense. I have 17 questions that I want to ask about that, and I'm just going to try to stay organized. But first, did you say that it picked you up?
Yeah, whether it or not it actually did.
Right.
Never really know.
Yeah,
but I do remember being off of my bed, and my bed faces my door. Well, at the time it faced the door, and the side of my bed was against the wall or towards the wall. It was about maybe 5 feet in between my bed and the wall, and I was off of my bed, dangling in midair. Yeah, it at least felt like it picked me up from what I remember.
Wow. Yeah, because one of the things I was going to ask you is, they can have visual hallucinations, kinesthetic hallucinations. That would definitely be probably a kinesthetic hallucination. If you really believe that it's a lot of people experience the feeling of being dragged out of bed, for example. I've never heard actually being picked up, though. That's extremely intense.
Yeah, I've heard of being dragged around, sort of. I've heard about that.
And then obviously that was a visual hallucination as well. What did you hear, though, in terms of auditory hallucinations, if anything at all?
As far as the hallucination aspect of it, I could hear things around the house, watching TV, things like that. But as far as what I could actually hear that wouldn't have been in the house normally, I guess, was the sound that it made when it had picked me up. I never really had a way to explain what it sounded like until like years later when like the Harry Potter movies came out. It's a pretty lame reference, but the Death Eaters and Harry Potter, I don't know if you've ever watched the movies. I'm sure you have.
Yeah, but yeah, I'm trying to think of what sound the Death Eaters make. Do you mean
Yeah,
the
it was.
Do you mean the Dementors?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Oh
Lots-
yeah.
yeah, the Dementor, the cloaked kind of, they flew around and sucked out all your happiness.
Oh, so it made the noise of the soul sucking?
Yeah, about
Oh
that kind of noise. Because I remember when I saw the movie for the first time, I heard that kind of like, I wouldn't say triggered me, but it kind of brought back some flashbacks.
Oh my god, yeah, because they
Yeah,
look.
that sounds exactly.
Wow. I wonder if they were based on like the shadow person, because that's a very common, hypnagogic hallucination. Like, I wonder if she based them on that. That's kind of an interesting thought.
Yeah, maybe.
Another thing that I picked up on from your first experience there is that it was while you were falling asleep. And you also said that, sometimes when you're very physically active before bed, you'll tend to have it. So, in general, would you say that you tend to have your sleep paralysis as you're falling asleep more than waking up? Have you ever had it waking up?
It is more along the lines of as I'm trying to fall asleep, but there probably were a couple of times in between, just throughout the years that I've had it upon waking up. And in fact, now that I talk about it has happened quite a few times. It's sort of minus all the auditory and visual aspects, and it's more just straight paralysis. That tends to happen if I sleep on my stomach, and it's kind of dangerous for me, I guess, because it has happened a few times, and I don't sleep on my stomach anymore because of it. Because I kind of sleep, you got your head in your pillow, you sleep on your stomach, but when I wake up and I do find out I can't move my body, my face is also buried in my pillow, and it leads me to really not be able to breathe. So I'm sort of slowly suffocating in my pillow as my body refuses to move, and it's a pretty scary experience, and that's kind of why I don't sleep on my stomach anymore, because that tends to happen.
Wow.
It
But
has happened quite a few times.
yeah, but the actual content of your hallucinations is different when you're waking up, like even if you're on your back waking up, it's different hallucination content than when you're falling asleep.
Yeah, when I'm on my back, I don't experience it upon waking. I'll usually experience it upon going to sleep. But when I'm on my stomach, I won't experience it upon waking or upon going to sleep, but I'll experience it upon waking. But they're kind of almost, depending on which way I sleep, depends on which, how I'm going to get the sleep paralysis, if I get it at all. But for upon waking, upon going to sleep on my stomach, I won't really experience any hallucinations at all. It's sort of just me being paralyzed.
Interesting. Yeah, I've heard that's actually, I think, the most common. I've heard my brother describe. He has sleep paralysis, but he doesn't have any hallucinations. So, yeah, that's interesting. And in terms of sleep paralysis demons, of course, this is one of the things that's most interesting to people. And your first demon, if we want to call it that, sounds like kind of a shadowed. Sorry, I tried to say two words at once. A shadow person. Have you had any other sleep paralysis demons? Like when you tend to hallucinate, is it always the same figure, or are there different ones?
That one, the original one I had, was sort of a one-off. I never really saw it again. And there's been other times where I've experienced hallucinations, and it it's not so much that I see anything, but it's the feeling that something else is in the room, or something is near you, or your body gets what they call it. It's kind of something in the trait of humans. They kind of can sense something's near, and the hairs in the back of your head stand up, and all that.
Okay.
Like a defense reaction. My body kind of gets that. I get that feeling that somebody's standing just right over me or right behind me. I don't see anything, but it doesn't feel good. Like it doesn't feel like my mom is standing.
That sounds so uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's deeply uncomfortable, and I don't see it, but I feel it, and I can hear the voices when it happens. Usually it's just, I've heard other people say they get the same thing. It's kind of like just your name being called.
Oh no, that's not good.
Yeah. It's pretty awkward, and the whole time I'm just forcing my body to move around, trying to get it to snap out of it through just force. And when I wake up or finally snap out of it, I'll question people in the house, like, hey, did you hear me say anything, or did anybody call my name? Anything. Everyone. No, nobody said anything, just in there sleeping.
Wow.
Okay, you say something.
I heard of this one sleep paralysis demon that some people have that's referred to as the Cuddler. And it's a kinesthetic hallucination, but it's this sensation, if you're lying on your side, that there's someone behind you, and then sometimes you can even feel an arm wrapped around you.
That doesn't sound very confident.
Yeah, so it's kind of reminded me like the one thing you were saying, like you feel the presence, but I guess you don't physically feel the presence. You just know that someone's there watching you, and you can maybe kind of see them in your peripheral vision. Or do you have somebody like full on, like pressed up right behind you, touching you ever?
No.
Okay.
No, I've never felt that. It is pretty much just the feeling that someone's there.
Okay. All right. And you partially answered this question already, but I was going to ask if the frequency or the hallucination content changed over time. Of course, you said that your first hallucination was unique and that it's sort of different, but the other part to that question is, do you think that your hallucinations mirror your life, or do you think that there's ever something different about one in particular that's reflective of something that's going on in your life?
It's kind of hard to pinpoint that exactly. My memory,
Fair enough.
at times, admittedly, it gets fuzzier over the years. Just as we get older, it just kind of deteriorates. But
Sure.
I mean, there hasn't really been a point in my life where changes weren't happening. I was pretty, like Papa was a Rolling Stone kind of deal, vagabondish, moving around place to place. There's always some changes. But the times in which I would have it kind of seem to be when I'm reaching the end of, like wearing out my welcome in a place, so I feel, when it's almost time to get moving again.
Interesting.
And it kind of flares out. I don't know if they're connected, or maybe it's coincidence. I'm not sure.
It could be maybe anxiety related to change. That could be what it is.
It could be, and pretty much kind of, like from the beginning when I first had it till now, the content of it definitely has changed to being less dramatic or less fantastical, I suppose, to more kind of cut and dry, point blank. You're having it, you get this feeling, and it's not so much as crazy, I guess, as the original. So it has changed kind of in that way, I guess, sort of lessened.
Mm. All right. And then can you pinpoint like what the first, major change might have been that triggered the original? Like life change, I mean?
Mhm. I mean, looking back on it, I felt pretty set up. Like nothing really felt too topsy turvy. I had
Hmm.
often like moved from school to school to school just over my life, but at that point, I'd pretty much been in one for a few years. I was kind of feeling pretty like regular, I guess, like normal. Like I wasn't the one finally like moving. I felt like everything was good. Mom was taking care of everything. School, girl I'd go see next door.
Hmm.
Everything felt good. It didn't feel like anything crazy was happening. I,
Interesting.
yeah, I can't recall any sort of big change at that time.
That's almost spookier in a way. Makes it scarier that it just came out of nowhere.
Yeah, I tried for a few years after that to figure out exactly why I got that certain experience.
Hmm. And you answered this partially because you described the first episode as feeling like it was going forever. And interestingly, I know this from reading. I've never really had sleep paralysis myself, but it only is supposed to last from a few seconds up to like 3 minutes tops. But was wondering if you could put a numeric value on how long the episodes feel.
Let's see. Well, if I'm starting with the first one, just in the series of events that took place, I'd say yeah, it felt like it was probably close to about, I guess, 10 minutes. I say like he didn't. I didn't see it like come out from the door like just quick. Like it was sort of drawn out, like building up suspense in a way. Um, just like slowly sauntered over towards the bed, and it felt like it took forever.
Hmm.
I'd say it was roughly 10 minutes, if not a little under. But yeah, I mean, maybe that's why my mother had claimed I was only in there. I had only just laid down. Um, I wasn't so convinced of that. I felt something completely different than what she described as far as time goes.
Interesting. Have you ever tried to get any sort of treatment for it, like hypnotherapy or something like that?
I haven't. I had went to a psychologist for something completely unrelated, just some relationship stuff, um, and I just happened to bring it up in a session. Just hey, whatever, we should know something about it. Um, and they had mentioned, I mean, pretty much just hey, we can do these sleeping pills if you want, or maybe it is just like stress. And it's about as much as I ever got from a professional about it. But I never really sought out anybody that dealt with this kind of stuff
Hmm.
as a profession.
And likewise, I know you mentioned that you avoid sleeping on your stomach, but are there any techniques that you've maybe read about and employed that have improved the situation in any kind of way?
Improved as in lessened uh, the ability to get sleep paralysis.
Well, I guess there's two parts. So, reduce the incidence, and then also, when you have it, is there a way that you figured out to deal with it better?
Um, Deal with it better? No. That's actually the thing I've been trying to do for quite a few years, but the regularity of it, I can never quite be prepared for it. Um, I say I'm prepared, like already, but I'll get in a position that normally leads me to having sleep paralysis, and then I'll go to bed and wake up just fine, and nothing happens. It's like, so days, weeks, months, whatever go by, it might not happen. And then one night, just boom, there it is, and I'm completely caught off guard. I was prepared for it, and then by the time it got around, I completely forgot, and I'm no longer prepared. I try in the midst of it, okay, this is happening. I know what this is. Uh, just write it out. Don't get crazy. Don't get scared. Don't freak out. Just see where this goes. And it just never works. Just that feeling of uh, like dread, I guess, just surfaces up, even if you know what's happening.
Oh, wow.
It won't seem to. It almost seems like it's being forced on you rather than you just experiencing it naturally.
Hmm.
Like dread embodied, I guess is. I don't really know how to explain it. I know exactly what's happening. Just
Jeez.
can't seem to shake it off.
Yeah.
And as far as like dealing with it and getting over it, um, I tend to just sort of focus on my body despite it being paralyzed. And you ever tried to move your arm after it fell asleep, or something like that? It
Yes.
just sort of feels like nothing, but you attempt to move it anyway. It's kind of like that minus the tingly feeling. Um,
All
you
right.
just sort of brute force it, I guess, into actually moving, which usually leads to me like jumping as if I've just had a nightmare. And people around me will notice that portion. They just don't see me doing anything during. I've actually had people standing around me as I'm sitting there going through sleep paralysis, and they've got no idea. They don't see me. I can watch everybody do everything. I'll even wake up and tell them, "You did this over here. You talked to this person. You said this. This is on the TV," and they've got no answers as far as it. So I don't know how they didn't see my eyes open if I'm seeing all of it.
Wow.
But
Uh,
uh, that's about as much as I've figured out as how to deal with it. It's just kind of sheer brute force your body into moving.
Interesting. Yeah, I guess it's your subconscious is very like powerful in that regard. I've heard like theories as to why it's so terrifying, and it's probably just because your like parts of your brain, your unconscious part of your brain is just not okay with being paralyzed essentially or realizing that you can't move, and it's just that feeling of vulnerability that just I guess snowballs. But yeah, it's crazy to think that even when you're consciously telling yourself, "Oh no, we're fine. It's going to be over soon." Like even then, your subconscious just builds that up. That's insane.
Yeah, it's sort of freaky, and because I want to, even though it's terrifying, even though it really catches you off guard, I want to stay in it, but I don't. Like I want to experience. I want to see how far it can go.
Interesting.
I want to test it, see what happens.
You're
I guess I'm just that type of
a
person. But
glutton for punishment. Yeah.
but at the same time, I'm overcome with that sense of dread, and I'm just forcing myself to snap out of it anyway. So like as I'm forcing myself to snap out of it, I'm like, stop. You want to see where this goes? This is what you wanted. It's happened, and the other part of my body is just like, I don't care what you're talking about. We're getting out of this. This is weird, and um, we're gonna try and get this over with. But as far as preventing it, I suppose I've I've found sometimes at least I haven't been able to perfectly recreate. Well, I guess you could say during the times it's not happened. Maybe that's me, successfully recreating it um, to make it not happen. But I found I can't really be uncomfortable when I go to sleep. Um, I can fall asleep while I'm uncomfortable, but like I said, that kind of tends to bring it on. Like if I've had a bunch of, if I've been working out right before I go to sleep, my body is still sort of, on that adrenaline rush. It still sort of wants to go and move around.
Hmm.
So it's not really ready to go to sleep, but my brain is tired. Um, so started thinking, maybe that's what's causing it. I'm just too active before I go to sleep, and I need to have a good couple of hours of doing nothing before I actually tend to go to bed. And that's kind of been my routine now. It's making sure there's a couple of hours at night where I'm not doing anything, just lounging around, being lazy, then I go to sleep. And
Interesting.
it doesn't really happen. But I've got to be completely comfortable. No funny clothing stuff happening, nothing like rubbing on me to make sure I'm awake, or to make sure it knows that I'm laying there. I gotta feel completely immersed in my bed or whatever it is I'm sleeping on in order for it to not happen.
Okay. So I guess that's one way in which it modifies your behavior. Would you say that it inspires creativity in any of your hobbies, or is it just something that you deal with?
I've it has kind of like I feel like I'm a creative person, but I'm also a huge procrastinator, and so I don't really get around to doing a lot of things that might come to mind, or I'll just say, somebody's probably already done it. No. But I've written a few short stories years back. They never got published or anything. It's just sort of like a journal, and I write a story and put it in a little blog.
What genre?
How would you say? I don't know. Kind of a bunch of them. Action, fantasy.
Cool.
You say not post-apocalyptic, but I guess post-apocalyptic. Yeah, everything's kind of ruined, and it's a new form of life out there. And then I used to draw a while back, and I guess you could say that would kind of factor into some of the drawings I did. Everything would be a little bit fuzzy, a little bit hazy. When I would draw it, it wasn't very crisp and sharp, which kind of reflected how things look when you're in sleep paralysis. Nothing's really crisp. It always looks like there's just a glaze over your eyes, a little bit foggy.
Interesting. I know that probably your first experience was your scariest, but was there any other that was noteworthy in standing out for how scary it was?
Yeah, I think that'd probably be the first time that I experienced sleep paralysis upon waking up.
Okay.
So it was the first going to sleep and then the first waking up. Two of the ones, because I think the time in between when those happened was probably a few years. So I didn't really forget about it, but it sort of put it in the back of my mind. Okay, that was just a thing. Put it in the memory bank. It's gone. And then the very first time that I had sleep paralysis on waking up was a different sort of freak out, because it was less fantastical, but I remember being on a bed. We were at one of my mother's friend's house, and the door was open. It was daytime. I guess I was taking a nap, and I lay down, face down, had my head on the pillow, facing the door. And when I woke up, I could see my mother sitting on the couch in the room, and she's chit-chatting with her friends. They're all having a good time in life, and I can't move. I'm laying in the bed watching my guardian, my mother, sit there and not realize that I'm literally paralyzed and can't go anywhere. And I'm also slowly suffocating my pillow because it's molding around my face, kind of lifts up over my mouth, and I feel like I can't breathe. I'm trying to gasp for air, and it's nothing's happening. I'm trying to push myself over. I felt like I was slowly dying while watching my mother just continue with her life.
Wow.
And it was a bit traumatic, small me, to watch that. I kind of blamed her a little bit after it happened. Like, man, I'm right here, and you weren't paying any attention at all. And it wasn't until way later I realized that people, they can't see you at all when you're doing this. They kind of just assume you're doing what you were doing before and just sleeping.
Mm-hmm.
Notice things going on with you.
Oh, that's so freaky.
It was a bit traumatic to kind of know that that's the person that's supposed to keep watch of you, make sure everything's good and you're here in the ultimate not good position, and they can't even tell.
Yeah, you're just trapped inside your own head. So freaky. Well, thanks for coming and talking with me, Maury. That was a lovely chat. I don't have much of an audience, but feel free to give a shout out to anything that you like.
That's I don't really have anything to shout out. I'm not doing too much these days. Just like to come in here and talk to people, you know.
All right.
Some memories, experiences. That's about it.
Fair enough. Well, thanks again so much.
Man, I appreciate it.
Have a good one.